Okay, stepping back into the theater of the mind by Andy Molnar, discussing the introduction now to project management. All that's been background and key terms and strategy with the business documents. Here we go. Let's do this. Here is a slide that discusses the objectives for this week largely. We talked in the early days about this is the overall project management plan. These are your 5 process groups with the processes inside of them. We still haven't talked the inputs, tools, and techniques and outputs for each process yet, but we will, starting with stakeholder management next. But for now, we have these business documents that help us define the charter at a high level as we drill down into a detailed project management plan that we can execute and control. That's what we're about. So the PMBOK guide is the body of knowledge. I hate it when people say the book of knowledge. Drives me nuts. It's a small pet peeve. I had to share it. Thanks for listening. It's not a cookbook, though, as I mentioned. You can't open up page 1, go to page 800, have a successful project. You must integrate it, and you have to mandate the integration and make trade-offs along the way, right? And understand the influencers on your project. We've already talked about these, so I'm just going to kind of touch and go. But 3 project influencers are the enterprise environmental factors, EEF, shown here, right? They're external and internal to the project, but still to the company, but still external outside of your project. But they impact your project. And then there are OPAs, organizational process assets. Those fall under 2 types: processes, policies, and procedures, and the knowledge base. Memorize those, please. Good multiple choice question items. The third influencer is just the organizational systems. And the project manager must be aware of competence, influence, leadership, power, and politics. I use the acronym CLIP, right? We clip along. And that is the nexus, is the project manager in the center. It's kind of like a fire. All of these things are needed to create a fire. All of these things are needed to be balanced to be a great project manager. So key terms, we've already been through the EEFs. This is here. Please review it and study it. If you have more questions, go to section 2.2 of the PMBOK guide. Remember, these are items outside of the project but will impact your project. Things like market conditions. If I have to sell bonds to make money to fund my project, interest rates will impact my income flow, but I don't control interest rates, as an example. Now, continuing, and these are from some of the key terms lesson, right? OPAs, these are assets to a project manager, organizational assets. Why reinvent the wheel? Use the policies, procedures, and processes. You'll update them along the way to make your project a success. Make sure you get the right permissions to update a policy or procedure, but do it. And then you'll add to the body of knowledge. This is the knowledge base. You'll add historical information, lessons learned. In fact, when I start my project, I grab a previous knowledge base first. What historical information, lessons learned, even previous configurations were used in the projects. So all of this, CLEP and these organizational systems are used to create a sort of synergy in the project, right? A collection of components that are going to help me produce results. I also want to apply governance. This is what the PMO brings to the project, governance. That's that structural arrangement designed to determine and influence our behavior, right? How does the company manage decision making? What are the people involved, their roles, their structures? What is their risk assessment, their aversity to risk? What risk tolerance are they willing to take? Right? So governance is how authority is exercised on projects through alignment, through risk, through performance, and through communications. I just can't write the CEO of my company. There's a process to go through. That's governance. And the project manager has a very special role. You have some general management functions to take care of, right? Dividing the work, making sure there's the right authority, responsibility, and accountability. Creating a unity of effort, but yet a disciplined approach. A unity of direction, always updating the vision, mission, goals, and clearly communicating them. Treating people fairly and ensuring positive morale. That's what you do in a management perspective, right? And you do that within a type of organization, right? Not one size fits all, right? The PM has to learn to communicate within the type of organization, how it's aligned, to clarify authority, to understand paths for escalation of information. And so that will vary whether you are in one of these project types. Are you in a functional organization, which is led by a functional manager, sometimes called a department manager? And this is like a straight up and down silo, like you might have engineers in one function, project managers in another function, you might have accountants in a third function. They're functionally aligned, and you have to work up the chain, and decisions are made by functional managers. You could work in a projectized organization. Express Scripts sometimes is a common projectized place. Its nickname, so the nickname for a functional organization is a silo, straight up and down, like a farm silo. A projectized organization is no home, because when your project is done, they all worked right for the project manager. You had all the power and control and responsibility and authority, but you must make sure your team members have somewhere to go when the project is over. Most of us work in a matrix organization, which is known as two bosses, right? And some terms that are defined there are project coordinator, which has, so you're a project manager, but really in a matrix you might be a project coordinator or a project expediter, more like an assistant. You don't have any authority. As a coordinator, you have some authority at least. You have to understand your role in these organizations. And a matrix can be further divided into weak, balanced, or strong matrixed organizations. I lay out the definitions here on the slide. Pause, review it, make some notes. It could be a virtual organization or a hybrid organization or a PMO type organization. Be aware of that. That's going to change the synergy, how you communicate risks, how you escalate, etc. Now, to give you a visual, so what I did was I summarized at the bottom of the slide those types of organizations we just talked about. But notice the project manager's power shifts. You're very weak power in a functional organization. You're still weak, and it's kind of like a functional organization if it's a weak matrix. Balanced matrix, you get a little more power. A strong matrix, you have power. A project-oriented project or a PMO run project is very strong power for the project manager. That's going to change your approach. Notice if you see the term tight matrix, that has nothing to do with an organizational chart or where you're located. It really is just a reference to putting everybody together, maybe in a cubicle farm on the same floor. It has nothing to do with organizational charts and how you communicate and function. Now that's a good background. Now let's move to the role of the project manager. And these are the objectives for this portion of it. Remember, you're leading a team, right? So you want to consider in these the functional manager or the operations manager or others, right, that you have to work with depending on the type of organization that we just discussed. You may be involved prior to project initiation, right, prior to the charter. That's in the business documents development process. I said if you can, go for it. Do it. A lot of golden information there that you will need. And understand your sphere of influence, right? The top PMs have superior relationships, develop their communication skills, and a positive attitude. Now, continuing with the role of the PM, you are the only one responsible. You are responsible for this project, right? And so you have this sphere of that you have to be aware of, and you'll communicate differently in the team or with the other project portfolio or program managers here. You'll be working to meet stakeholder needs of the sponsors, of the governing bodies, and even with suppliers and communication experts. That's your sphere of influence, and it will evolve based on who you're talking to. Now, the project manager is proactive. That's a philosophy. You have an advocacy role along with your sponsor for your project, and you want to make sure you transfer tacit and explicit knowledge. Explicit knowledge is fact-based, they're facts, and tacit are things that are hard to describe, but you just kind of know as true, right? And we'll discuss some of that in later. An example that I always use is define for me a family. We're all going to be right. It's hard to explain, but we know what we're talking about, right? We also want to stay up with industry trends. That would be important as a project manager. Okay, there is a triangle of capability that PMI wants us to be aware of, and it is technical, strategic, and leadership. Those are the arms identified by this picture. So technical skills would include critical success factors, financial reports, keeping issues logs, etc. Where strategic and business skills are part of this talent triangle that PMI refers to it as, is understanding the strategy, the business documents, where you get things from, stakeholder risks, financial measures that drive the value of this company, this project to the company, and of course leadership. Now, leadership as part of the talent triangle has multiple aspects. One is leadership is the art of influence. Notice it's not management. It's leadership is the art of influence, to guide, motivate, and direct the team. Your skills are developed over time, so you want to be a lifelong learner, and you want to manage relationships, build trust, satisfy concerns, seek consensus. You want to communicate, and you want to continuously focus on prioritizing. A great project manager in making trade-offs with your iron triangle is always prioritizing critical thinking and building and working with effective teams. Now, continuing with leadership, you want to be aware of politics and power, right? Power can be the key. There's lots of power I listed here, but the key for any exam is positional power, which comes with reward and punishment power. Reward being the best and punitive being the worst. There's referent power, like Patton. You revere them in a way that whether you like them or not, you respect what they're doing and how they're doing it, so you follow it. There's situational power, like the technician might be responsible at some point, right? And you become the follower at times. And there's expert power, like our technologists. So those are some of the key ones to know, but frankly, all of them are forms of power that we have to address in our leadership approach. Continuing with leadership, we also have to be aware of styles, that some people are laissez-faire, right? Allowing others to make their own. So you're kind of hands-off. There can be a transactional leader where you manage by exception, a servant leader, which is putting the people first, a transformational leader, which is empowering and you're inspirational, a charismatic leader, where you inspire with high energy and enthusiasm and conviction, or even an interactional leader. And you will vary your approach at different times and go in and out of the process, right? So speaking of the process, I'm going to pause here. We'll come back just for a few minutes with part 2.